talking about abstract class in C Sharp. So one of the basic principles of object-oriented programming is generally encapsulation, abstraction, polymorphism, and inheritance. But today we'll be talking about abstraction. And what exactly is abstraction? Abstraction is actually a way of keeping and protecting business logic codes from being exposed to users. So it's a way of separation of concerns in programming. But let me see how to visually represent that. So let's assume there is a user, the end user of an application. So, and the end user is actually communicating with the user interface, right? Where you fill up your forms, send information back to the end. And the moment you click on that button as an end user, the button is going to trigger a method in a controller, right? Some action methods in a controller. And the method will instantly initiate and execute whatever logic that is written behind it. And if needs be for the method to actually talk to a database in the back end to retrieve data, okay, it fetch the data is being sent back to the controller executes, does what it needs to do with the data, and then it sends the information back to the front end and the user gets to see the information. Now let's assume that this user is a malicious user. Some users can actually inject scripting into the interface and send it to the backend if the backend is not well protected, or even SQL injection to manipulate data. So this is where you get to hear about information being hacked and illegally retrieving information and all that. So that is why the ideology of abstraction comes up. So in abstraction, the idea is to protect all the business logic in this code here, to protect it from being communicating with the user directly. So the best way to do that is basically if a user is in the front end, okay, so the user talks to the user interface, and then you want to use the user interface, want to have a middle layer here that will be consuming the services where the business logics are implemented. So then we have to instantiate that here. So the user will only be calling methods that is communicating to the backend. So the main idea is to have layers upon layers upon layers that can protect the main data in the back end, right? So let's see how that will work in real life programming. So for example, these are our entry points, and if we have to like create a class, we have to create an abstract class, then we need to like use the word abstract. So here I will go ahead and add class. Let's assume we are naming this class animal, right? Okay, so you should create a class animal. And one thing about abstract class is you have to put the keyword abstract, so it becomes an abstract class. So in an abstract class, it also works for inheritance as well, but the thing is you cannot instantiate an abstract class, and I will show you why. So in abstract class, like we said in interface, we can have predefined method, but we cannot implement our methods in the interface. But in abstract class allows us to implement our method in there and also have predefined abstract methods. So let's assume in animal makes sounds, right? So I'll do something like abstract void sound. Okay, so that's an abstract method itself. I'll use the public access modifier for that. So this is how we actually you know define method in interface, except that we don't use the abstract word in there. But in interface, I can't have implementation of let me say public void action. Let me see console dot write line. Okay, what can we do there? Animal is going to sleep. Okay, so in interface I cannot implement like this, but abstract class allows me to implement and also predefine. So the thing is, any class that will be inheriting this animal class, it must implement this predefined abstract method and use the override keyword. So if I go ahead and create another class, um, okay, let me just create that class in here. That way we can save time. Let me create class dog. Dog is an animal, right? And the dog will be inheriting from the animal base class. So now it will tell me to implement it. Remember, control dot. Okay, so it's implementing the sound. Now, how does that work? So now I need to override. You can see it's kind of give me the override keyword here. So uh, let me just go through it so I don't use the shortcut. Public override void sound, right? Okay. So now what I'm going to do here is what sound does dog makes? Let's put it something like console.writeLine. This is dog class. I make woof woof sound. Okay. Now let's try and create another class, something like cat. Okay. And then we are going to override the method from the abstract class itself. So I'll just put something like this is cat class. Okay. Yeah, so I guess that's the sound that cat makes, right? So now before we go into the main entry, let's go through what happened here. There's an abstract class with a predefined method, and all the other classes that are inheriting the abstract class, they are overriding that method and putting their own implementation. Overriding the method and putting their own implementation, right? Okay, so if we go back to the main class, the abstract class is animal class, right? Let's see if we can instantiate that animal a equal to new animal. So it wouldn't allow us to instantiate that. Let's see what it says. Cannot create an instance of abstract class, right? So now that means it won't give me access to the abstract. You see, it's not giving me access. It's not even going to run. So it's not allowing me to access this animal class here. Okay. So that class is being protected. So in here, I can have all the business logic. In real life, I can have all the business logic in here and maybe just make a print method, like, a method that, okay, once the transaction is complete, you can print. So that's the only method that I'll be able to override in here. So this method in the abstract class, I cannot access it without instantiating a derived class, right? So let's assume that we have a method transaction here, and then another class or a malicious programmer inherits the class and then override the method and then put his own logic there. That is going to be a really bad idea, right? So that's one of the use of abstraction in C#, ensuring that the data are saved. So we are working with this class, but we kind of use this other class to have access to it. We don't have direct access to that class, right? Um, so now what I'll do here is calling the dog class. So if I say something like d dot sound, right, then d dot action. Now the action here, recall that the dog class does not even have an action method. The action is here. So I can only access this class through this class. I don't have direct access to this class, right? So that's when I explained that the user, send details to the UI. The UI talks to the um, controller. The controller talks to the service class, and the service class talks to the database. You see that idea, right? So that's the idea that is actually happening here. But in real life, it's pretty much more complex than that. So let's just have a bigger picture of it. So now if I run this, right, and then I can also create for the cart itself, cart c equal to new cart, sound c dot action. Okay, so I just want to play with something here real quick. It's called thread. So first of all, before I try the thread thing, let's run this and see what we come up with. Okay, so that's the dog.sound, dog.action. Then that should tell us what sound the dog is making. So let's see the results here. Okay, first is printing this is dog class. I make woof woof sound. Animal is going to sleep, right? This is cat class. I make mew mew sound. Animal is going to sleep. So what if I want to add something? What if I want this in between the this is dog sound? I want it to like wait for like a couple of seconds before it prints out this one, right? Maybe like processing or something. Let's see how that works. So remember, I'm calling the method here, right? After calling this method, we can add a thread.sleep and put that like 3 seconds, right? Okay, or let me put 5 seconds so we can have enough time in there, right? So let's run this and see what happens. Okay, you see it's called this first, it's counting 1 to 5. After 5 it will release the second one. Did you see that? Okay, so but if I press enter and go to the cart, it didn't wait, right? Because I did not put the thread.sleep there. Okay, so the main idea is to get us familiar with this thread class, thread.sleep. So because we'll be working with this along the line, and we'll also see, the so just for you to understand that how this works. So you can actually, have something like uh, have the execution to like wait for a little bit before it goes to the next execution, right? So that is how it works. So for example, like it's wait is going to display the sound, then it's wait for 5 seconds, it displays the action, then I can probably like make it wait for another maybe 3 seconds. Let's put that to 3 seconds before it display the cat properties, right? So let's run that and see how it works. So notice that it displays this first and it's counting to 5 seconds. After 5 seconds, it displays the other one. Okay, then it counts like another 3 seconds, displays the cat one. So that is the thread at work there. So anyway, back to the main topic, which is the abstract class. So now we're actually working with the animal class here, but we don't have direct access to the animal class, so we have to call that through the dog class and the cat class. And even the dog class is executing the the implementation in the dog class, and the cat class is executing the implementation in the cat class, right? Because we have overridden the method in there. So the dog is it makes woof woof sound, right? And then the cat itself makes mew mew sound, right? So that's how that works. So anyway, that's it about abstraction. In the next class, we'll be talking about polymorphism, and as we move up, we'll be looking into some advanced topics in C Sharp, and eventually we'll start working with database and working with frameworks. So if there's any question, you might put it in the comment section, or you can even join our Facebook community. It will be in the description section. So where we actually interact and ask questions, and you can post questions, or if you're stuck in a project or something, we'll be glad to answer you. And don't forget to subscribe, share, and like this tutorial. See you in the next class. Thank you.